Yesterday, it made major news on just about every outlet across America that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, directed the Pentagon to simplify a list of Christians from around 200 to, I think, about 20, and this had to do with chaplains. Now, I have a problem with that because, as has been reported, the LDS Church, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was left off the list. That's disturbing. But even more disturbing than that the LDS Church was left off the list, is the fact that the list was created at all. Now, I believe that this list was created with harmless intentions. But you need not study history very deeply to understand when government starts creating lists of people that they deem to be one group or another, then you can easily create lists to separate and persecute individuals who belong to a certain group. That is my concern. So leaving the LDS Church off the list, whether you agree with that or not, it is more of a troubling idea that the government would be creating a list in the first place. It is troubling to me because this country was founded upon the freedom of religion. The First Amendment states in the first part that Congress shall make no law regarding the establishment of a religion, nor prohibiting the exercise thereof. Now, this would be a step in that direction of prohibiting the free exercise thereof, whether that was the intention or not. You don't have to believe me. Just look what's happened over the past 5 to 10 years. Catholics being persecuted for praying at abortion clinics. So what's to stop an individual when we see someone who claims to be a Christian and someone who is clearly not? What happens when they get involved? If they get involved in one of these administrative positions and then start deeming Baptist or Methodist or Lutherans, people that nobody would argue whether they're Christian or not, but they start deeming them Christians because they have beliefs that some group within the administration believes is not what a Christian should be. Then we start seeing persecution for religious exercise. This is disgusting. And you can see where I'm going with this very easily. Now, I want to encourage you to think about this very deeply because it's troubling that one group of people would be deemed as not Christian. It's not government's job to decide doctrinal matters. And I want to applaud Senator Mike Lee for bringing attention to this. And he's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He brought attention to this early Monday. I want you to listen to this, and then I'll continue talking about it because I got plenty to say. But first, listen to Senator Mike Lee from Utah.
The faith of the American people has always been one of its greatest strengths, as is the fact that the Constitution prohibits the United States government from treating people differently based on their religious beliefs, regardless of what denomination they might be drawn toward, they might belong to, or whether they have any faith at all. It's one of the many things that has strengthened our country, and it's especially important in this circumstance that the government recognize the faith of the men and women who serve in uniform and stand ready, willing, and able to die at any moment as they serve our country in times of war. For that very reason, I think it's very unfortunate that the Pentagon has chosen to identify basically every faith group in America that professes faith in Jesus Christ as Christian, with one exception. that is, those belonging to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I find this offensive, not just because that happens to be my faith, but not just because it happens to be the faith of tens of thousands of U.S. military personnel, but it's also just repugnant to any sense of decency, any sense of our common heritage and our common belief that the government needs to not weigh in on doctrinal disputes between various religious denominations. And so I respectfully am imploring people at the Pentagon to reconsider this. Not just reconsider it, but undo it. Secretary Hegseth, tear down that wall. This is not cool. Get rid of it. Get rid of it now. Thank you.
I agree with the senator from the great state of Utah that it is the free exercise of religion and religious conscience that has made this country great. The government should not be involved in this, as I previously said. And I need to bring your attention to something. I want to bring your attention to the letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist. Now, if you go back and you study the history of this, at the time that the Constitution was being written, the Danbury Baptist of Danbury, Connecticut, were an extreme religious minority. And they were worried that under the Constitution, that they would face persecution for being a religious minority. And Thomas Jefferson wrote back to the Danbury Baptist of Danbury, Connecticut, and said they need not worry about that because the Constitution set up a wall of separation of church and state so that they may exercise their religion freely. That, my friends, is the proper interpretation of the First Amendment and the separation clause. Now, that has been bastardized in recent decades, but I'll do another video talking about that. But historically, the First Amendment was put into the Constitution so to keep government out of arbitrating religious matters. Now, I want to thank my brother in Christ, Glenn Beck, because he announced on his radio program yesterday morning that he got a call from President Trump around 12:30 a.m. Sunday night. And he made his concerns clear about leaving the LDS Church off of the list. I want you to listen to what Glenn had to say with his call with the president. Take a listen to this, and we'll continue.
Call from the president last night at about 12:30, and he's like, "Glenn, I'm going to talk." And so we had a chat, and in it, I brought something up that Mike Lee had brought up earlier in the day to me about this new Christian designation in the Pentagon, and it really bothered me. And I laid my case out to the president briefly, and I get a remember he's on the phone with me at 12:30. I get a phone call at 5:30 this morning. I fixed that. That's ridiculous. And I think you're actually going to agree, whether you agree with reason why I brought it up or not. I think you'll agree with what the president just did. Just heard from Pete Hegseth on what the Pentagon is going to do, and it's the right thing. Let me tell you what I said to the president last night. Last night, the president calls me. It's about 12:30. He's still up and going, working. I mean, I'm in bed. President calls. Yes, Mr. President. I look down and I'm like, what is that number? Oh my gosh, that is the president calling me at 12:30 at night. So I pick it up. Yes, Mr. President. Glenn, and we started talking about a few things, talked about the Meet the Press interview. And then I brought this up and I said, Mr. President, why are we doing this? Why are we doing? And he didn't know anything at all about it. Okay. Now the reasoning has been, this is just an administrative change. And the Pentagon has said, it's no big deal. It's just administrative change. We're just sorting things out. We're just putting people in categories. That's the problem, okay? That is the problem that I have. The danger is not who holds the power today to categorize. The danger is that the power exists at all, okay? Everybody, and we can say this about ourselves, we're the reasonable ones. I don't expect Pete Hegseth to do anything with that. I mean, I don't think any persecution is coming from not, I don't think that, okay? We're the reasonable ones. We can be trusted with it. But people creating classifications never imagine themselves as the future oppressors. They see themselves as the organizers, the administrators, the managers. Look, this is a very complex system. I'm trying to simplify. And that's exactly what was said, okay? These categories are harmless. It's temporary. It's practical. It's necessary. Okay. But history teaches a different lesson. So I don't want you to make this. This is not about my faith, your faith, or anything else. This is about, let's not do this. This is a very bad idea. The moment a government decides who they can define, who belongs and who doesn't belong, who's inside the circle, who stands outside the circle, it creates a tool. And that tool is going to be inherited by people with very different convictions. So I would be defending your faith just as much as my faith on this. The authors on the list will not control its future. They just are building the machine. Others are going to operate it. I just talked about this almost exact same thing when I was talking about you can't say that guy's an Islamist, he can't run. Based on what? Based on what? There is no law for that. We don't want more systems. We don't want more lists. And today's classifications, I think, are innocent, okay? They may be affecting nothing more than paperwork or statistics or administrative convenience or whatever. But tomorrow, they could influence funding and access and recognition and hiring and promotion and public standing. And the day after that, they could become the basis for bias and exclusion. No one can guarantee where that line is going to stop once the line is drawn. You know, there are currently, and now listen up, because I want to bring this home to you who don't believe the same things that I do. And that is fine. I'm not trying here to convert you to anything. But there are faiths right now, you know and I know, that preach, teach, and enforce such woke nonsense that I wouldn't even begin to know where to begin to find them in the scriptures, okay? God is non-binary. God is trans, that he's accepting of all lifestyle choices. Jesus is fine with mutilating children because Jesus might be trans. Jesus is a Marxist, or Jesus is cool with abortion. They're preaching that stuff in, quote, Christian churches. So let me give you the scenario, because it might seem crazy now, although, honestly, after what we've witnessed over the last 10 years, I mean, you know, the criminal penalties for not wearing a mask, doctors refusing to treat you if you're not vaccinated, Catholics being put on a terror list by the FBI. I mean, it would make me want to stop calling warnings, you know, crazy, but maybe that's just me. Let's just say the scenario. One of those woke churches found themselves in an administrative position in our Pentagon. Let's say the Pentagon would do something crazy, like say to males that if you identify as a woman, you can wear a dress as a uniform. Okay, but they'd have to be really crazy to do stuff like that. And those same administrators decided that you and your church were no longer Christian. Would you want them to have the power to do that? They would tell you it's just administrative, but what about the next non-binary person and the next non-binary preacher that gets the desk and the pen? Would them use the list as administrative? The words that are the most dangerous are not "we want control," because they're announcing it, okay? They're "trust us. Trust us. We can decide who the good Christian is," and I'm telling you that won't stop with my faith. Trust us to decide which church is legitimate and which isn't. Trust us to decide which beliefs fall within the acceptable boundary. Trust us, our intentions are good. Perhaps they are. Perhaps they are. But institutions should never be built on assumptions that good intentions and good people are permanent, because they're not. I don't want the government making lists. I don't want the government deciding, especially when it comes to religion, what's one faith and what's another faith. They shouldn't be making these classifications. And if you're cheering for these classifications, just ask yourself, if my opponents controlled the system tomorrow, if what could very well happen in 2028, where they get control of the House and the Senate and the White House, do you want them to have the authority to define legitimacy? I don't. If the standards are rewritten by people who view my deepest or your deepest convictions as obstacles to progress, they've already told you what they do. If that possibility troubles you, then you understand my problem with this whole thing. Liberty doesn't depend on having the right people in power. Liberty depends on denying anyone the power who decides which citizens fit in which category. Okay? A government that can classify faiths can reclassify them. A government that can define orthodoxy can redefine it. A government that can decide who belongs can decide who doesn't belong. That's why free societies are wise to be cautious and never do these things, no matter how innocent it appears. I made this case to the president last night. And he said, Glenn, I don't know anything about it. I don't know why they're doing it. And I said, they're doing it because of administrative things. And it is going to make things simpler, I guess, if you've got 1,000 and you're just saying this one's this and this one's that. He listened to me. He said, I'm going to look into it first thing. I got a note from him this morning at 5:20. And I said, may I share this? And he said, sure. He actually then calls me. But let me see where it is. He said to me, done. They're Christians. Congratulations. I love the Mormons. President Donald J. Trump. Okay. So whenever he says stuff like that, then he calls me. I said, can I share that? And he said, yes. He calls me. He says, yes, absolutely. I got to tell you, that group of people voted for me by 95%. I'm never going to forget that. Okay, so take that with a grain of salt on what he actually did. What he actually did was he didn't declare us Christians. I didn't do it, whatever. What he did was he said, stop with the categories. Stop it. Stop with categories. We don't need it. And that, to me, is the right answer. Not to say my faith is Christian, your faith is Christian, but to say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're in a foxhole. Here's a chaplain. Okay, if you're Islamic or you're Jewish, I'm not going to send a priest to you. But I'm sorry. Everyone in my faith will listen to a chaplain who's reading from the Bible. We all pray to the same God. You may not think so. We do. It's okay. Let's argue that at another time. What do you say we all get into the foxhole and stop pointing the guns at one another and stop shooting at the enemy? What do you say? Let Jesus work all this stuff out. You guys will have an all big laugh when you're up in heaven and I'm burning in hell. You'll be like, I told him so, and you'll all be laughing. That's fine. I'll take the consequence at that point. Let's just band together and try to do the right thing. To welcome the Lord for his second coming, because I think it might be near.
I agree wholeheartedly with my friend and brother in Christ, Glenn Beck. The issue, primarily with me, and it should be with you, any freedom-loving American, is not primarily that the LDS Church was left off the list, as I said before, but that there was a list created at all, because government should not be involved in determining who is Christian or not. And Glenn, receiving a call from the president at 12:30 in the morning on a Sunday night, could have saved Christians from generational persecution, even though this list was created with harmless intentions, or so I believe. It could have been used for bastardizing the First Amendment. And thank God that Glenn Beck made President Trump aware of this and that it was amended. I don't want to see anybody, I don't care who you are, discriminated against or persecuted because of their sincerely held religious beliefs. And this should fly in the face of all freedom-loving Americans. I don't care where you line up religiously. This is a first principles issue. So thank God that it was rectified, and the Secretary of War put out a statement issuing corrections, echoing that sentiment, that government is not involved and should not be involved in arbitrating religious disputes between people. This is common sense. As I said, this is a first principles issue. I shouldn't even be talking about this, but thank God that Glenn helped the president direct this in a proper way. And we're not going to see individuals persecuted based on their religious beliefs. I don't care whether you believe that the LDS Church is Christian or not, even though I do. Because I believe, as Christ said in Matthew chapter 7, that a tree is known by its fruit. And if a Christian bears Christian fruit, the fruit of Christ, I don't care what church they do or don't belong to. They are a person of Christ. They are a child of God. And that's not arguing with me. That's arguing with the Lord to say otherwise. And last I checked, you and I are not Jesus. We are not God. So we don't get to make that determiner. He does. But I want to admonish you that Christian people do not bear ungodly fruit, as Christ said in Matthew chapter 7. An apple tree is not going to bear orange fruits, my friends. The people of Christ will be known by their fruits. If you agree with me that it's disgusting that this should happen, and you want to show some appreciation and respect for Glenn Beck for taking up for religious liberty, do me a favor. Like this video so that more people see it. I want to blow up this story because I shouldn't have even had to talk about it today. But thank God that it's been rectified. So like this video so that it helps out the algorithm. Share it so that more people see it. And subscribe to my channel for more content. Because we are going to create an army of liberty warriors. I'll see you in the next video.